Okay, Natural Resources class, this is just a short video, hopefully, to finish up regeneration of a forest. Before I get there, I just wanted to show you this idea that not everybody's very interested in harvesting timber. I already made the point previously that the national forests were established to supply timber to the nation, and national forests are not national parks. They are not national monuments. They're a different entity established in part to be harvested, to be logged, and to be regenerated. But not everybody sees it that way. Here, for instance, is the Sierra Club. This is their homepage. It's kind of interesting how, see if I reload it, the first thing that comes up is, you know, how much money you want to give and get you signed up. You know, if you look at some of their publications, headway made to halt logging. That's really what they're after, is end logging. If you look down here, end commercial logging on federal lands. And they want to stop clear-cutting California. It goes on and on. So not everybody thinks that silviculture should be practiced on our national forests. Just to give you the notion that forests can be harvested sustainably. There's that word, folks. Here is a picture. This is actually my dad in 1964. He was harvesting hard maple. This actually went to make yo-yos. the kids' toy. They used to be made out of hard maple, sugar maple, in Luck, Wisconsin. And this particular spot is of note. Right here behind him are these two trees, and this road actually split around there. And it's just a logging road. And this, let's see if I can scroll this down. Oh, yeah. This actually was, the owner of this actually contacted me here, 5-10 years ago, and wanted to hire me to create a forest management plan for him on the same property that my dad had logged many years before. My dad since has passed away. So I said, sure, would love to do it. And so we did. And on this exact stand, there was a forest that had been regenerated. I marked the trees that should be cut, and we left a certain number of trees to, again, reestablish a forest. And it looks like this. This is that same stand that you saw previously, right here, same stand. Now, well, this is 2018. This is what it looks like. Here's that split in the road. This is actually even one of the trees, a little bit bigger now, that was there in 1964. This has been thinned a second time, selectively harvested a second time since my dad did it in 64. It had been harvested previous to that at least once when the original pine had been cut over. But you can see a forest continues. The forest endures because it has been selectively cut and well managed. So if you look then at how forests are reestablished, looking at your notes, there's this term that I mentioned before, coppice or vegetative asexual regeneration. You don't have to have pollen and an egg to reestablish a forest. We see that with lots of trees, such as aspen here. This is in Tamarack Nature Center, just across from my, oops, sorry, wrong button, across from my house. Wanted that one. Here, this is called an aspen clone, and if you can see this line of aspen trees here, in the middle are some older trees. This may be a dead one, but there was one parent tree, and underground these roots then branched out from that parent tree, and every little bit they pop back to the surface and make a new tree. So this is arguably all one individual, but there are multiple trees. That is what went into making the stand like you see here. Let's see if I have that other one still up. This stand here, oops, didn't want to do that. If I go up to the top, October, that's what all these aspen are. There were stumps that were in the ground. They had viable roots yet and produced a new forest without humans doing anything other than to harvest the parents. So that is suckering. Another type of regeneration that can occur without people having to do anything at all is something called stump sprouts. And here we have an example of a red maple that the stump is right here, and these are just dormant buds, like we saw with those epicormic buds after a fire. They sprout out and create a new tree. Deer love to chew these off. So there's a battle. Will this tree grow tall enough so a deer won't browse it off before it can outgrow the deer's reach, if you will? But this is how maple are reestablished. Here's that same another tree, same species. In the wintertime with leaves off, and one in the background, you can see how many sprouts. This is an incredibly valuable wintertime deer browse source too. And then they do survive. This is not the greatest picture, but here is a red maple stump with multiple saplings that have reached higher than a deer. And in the background, you can see several white birch. I actually harvested this stand in 1980 when I was in undergrad. That was some of my weekend work, and so it's kind of fun to come back after the fact and actually see that forest spring back to life. So stump sprouts is another way to get a forest to come back. Seeding, it's interesting. Seeds, many of them need to be what we call stratified. If you take a red oak acorn, not a white oak acorn, a red oak. Remember, red oaks have the pointy ends to leaves. And plant it in the fall of the year, it won't germinate. It has to be stratified. It needs cool, moist conditions like you would find at the snow-soil interface to germinate. And so that's what would go on here. This is a red oak stand. Red oak acorns would be produced in the canopy, fall to the ground, be covered by snow, and in that time their complex molecules like the starches would break down into simpler ones like simple carbohydrates that an embryo can use to germinate and grow. And it's this whole idea of unless a seed falls to the ground and dies, it will not bear fruit. You know, that biblical passage. Well, that's exactly what has to happen with a red oak acorn before you can get a tree. Normally, what I do in the class at this part, I've harvested some acorns in the fall of the year. I will stratify some, put them in the fridge in a damp paper towel for a month or two, leave others at room temperature. The ones that I leave at room temperature won't germinate. The ones that I leave in the wet paper towel in the fridge for a couple months, they'll mostly germinate. So there are things you can do to reestablish a forest, and you know, oftentimes it doesn't involve you doing anything other than getting out of the way and letting nature do its own work. And kind of as just sort of a final thing here, if you look at your notes, you know, planting seedlings, we've already showed you what that looks like, and of course that's more time and labor intensive and would be more expensive. But if you look at it, even just if every forest were replanted in this country, there are 3 trees planted for every tree cut. So we do almost exclusively really work at reestablishing a forest after it's been harvested. We don't any longer just cut it down and let it be. And so I guess that's where I would like to leave this consideration of forestry, and just leave you with that image of what a forest can look like after at least 3 harvest operations. And the next lecture will be on agriculture. Thank you.